Hello hockey fans and welcome back to another video. The Swedish Hockey League is often regarded as one of the best leagues in Europe and one of the highest levels of competition across the hockey world. Since the country is home to some of the greatest talent that the sport of hockey has ever seen, and since its domestic league has become quite the breeding ground for future NHL stars, it's no wonder that the SHL has garnered such a strong reputation over the years. Though the Swedish league is primarily comprised of future NHL regulars, former draft picks and career SHLers, it has also become a landing spot for many NHL alumni who can no longer find a place in the best league in the world. Whether they are former SHL regulars who are returning home after a lengthy tenure in the show, other Europeans who have headed back across the pond for the first time in many years, or North American players that are embarking on a new adventure overseas, the SHL is currently home to some pretty impressive names during the 21-22 season. Given that so many NHL veterans are currently playing in Sweden, and given that my previous video on the league last year did so well, I figured that it would be worth taking another look at the SHL during the current season of play, in order to make an updated list of the NHL alumni who now find themselves plying their trade in Sweden. So in today's video, allow me to take you through my list of the top 10 former NHLers who are playing in the Swedish Hockey League this season. Kicking things off at number 10, we have Tom Kuhnhackl. The only entry to have ever lifted the Stanley Cup, Tom Kuhnhackl is putting his championship winning experience on full display during his debut year in Sweden. A 4th round pick in the 2010 draft by the Pittsburgh Penguins, Kuhnhackl would take to the ice in parts of 5 NHL seasons, split between the Penguins and the New York Islanders, where he scored 18 goals and 45 points in 232 games for his efforts. During this span, the German forward would also get his name etched onto the greatest trophy that the sport has to offer on multiple occasions, as he was a member of the Penguins team that won back-to-back championships in 2016 and 2017. 2 cups in 5 years sounds pretty good to me, folks. Following a 28-game stint with the Islanders during the 2019-20 NHL season, Kuhnhackl would spend the rest of that year, as well as the recent 2021 season in the AHL with the Islanders affiliate the Bridgeport Sound Tigers, before taking his talents to Sweden for the current season of play, as he signed a 2-year contract with SHL side Skellefteå AIK on August 12, 2021. Since then, Kuhnhackl has joined Skellefteå's roster for the 21-22 SHL season. Though he last played hockey in Europe roughly 11 years ago now, and though he hasn't lit the Swedish league on fire during the opening weeks of the season, with 5 points in his first 17 SHL games at the time of this recording, the 29-year-old forward has still produced a respectable start to the year for a Skellefteå side currently sitting 4th place in the league standings. Sure, Kuhnhackl may not be winning a scoring title anytime soon, but given that he is an effective two-way player, and given his championship-winning track record in the best league in the world, I think he will end up producing a pretty strong year for himself during his debut season in Sweden. Will this happen though? I guess we'll have to wait and see. Next up at number 9, we have Jacob de la Rose. The youngest entry to be featured on this list, Jacob de la Rose is eager to get his career back on track during his opening season back home. A 2nd round pick by the Montreal Canadiens in 2013, de la Rose would take to the ice in 242 NHL games over parts of 7 seasons split between the Habs, the Detroit Red Wings and the St. Louis Blues, scoring 13 goals and 38 points in the process. Following a 13-game stint with the Blues during the recent 2021 season, the Swedish forward decided to take his talents back across the pond and return to his homeland, as he signed a 3-year contract with the SHL's Färjestad BK on June 1st, 2021. Having returned to his domestic league for the first time in 7 years, and having suited up in Färjestad's organisation for the first time since 2001, the 26-year-old has begun to find his feet in the SHL once more. With 7 points in his first 16 games of the season, de la Rose might not be leading his team in scoring, but he has become a reliable middle 6 presence for a Färjestad side that's still in the running for a place in the SHL's top 5. Given that he shall be sticking around in Sweden for the foreseeable future, and given that he will be calling Färjestad his home for several seasons to come, I expect that De La Rose will make himself comfortable over the coming years. After all, he's on pace to register his most productive season in the last half a decade. He could certainly be doing a lot worse for himself, you know. Moving on to number 8, we have Christian Folin. The only defenseman in this video, Christian Folin has become quite the locker room leader since his return to his native country. An undrafted player during each of his years of eligibility, Folin's impressive numbers in the NCAA would earn him an entry-level contract with the Minnesota Wild on April 1st, 2014. From there, the Swedish defenseman would spend parts of 7 seasons in the NHL, split between 4 different teams, where he scored 8 goals and 44 points in 244 games for his efforts. After a 16-game stint with the Montreal Canadiens during the 2019-20 season, Folin would spend the rest of that year in the minors with Montreal's AHL affiliate the Laval Rocket before returning home to Sweden, as he joined the SHL's Växjö Lakers for the recent 2021 season. Thanks to his 4 points in 17 regular season games, and thanks to his part in helping Växjö clinch a title as the 2021 playoff champions, the undrafted defenseman would take his talents elsewhere in the league and return to a familiar franchise, as he signed a 4-year contract with Frölunda HC on May 27, 2021. Since then, Folin has joined Frölunda's roster, returned to his former organisation for the first time since 2010, and is suiting up in Gothenburg for the 21-22 season. Not only has the blue liner reunited with the team that he spent his entire junior career with, he has already become a key member of the roster just a few weeks into the season. Wearing an A on his jersey as an alternate captain of the team, Folin has scored 8 points in his first 18 games of the year, meaning that he has doubled his production with Växjö the year prior in just 1 more game played, while also helping Frölunda secure a first-place ranking in the SHL standings at the time of this recording. Since he has already made such an impact during his return home, and since he will be sticking around with Frölunda until the year 2025, if he can keep his recent play going over the next few seasons, I think this deal will end up working out pretty well for both the player and the organisation in the long run, don't you? At the 7th spot on this list, we have Peter Holland. One of the only first-round draft picks in this video, Peter Holland has made Sweden the latest stop on his European hockey tour. The 15th overall pick of the 2009 draft by the Anaheim Ducks, Holland would take to the ice in 266 NHL games over parts of 8 seasons split between 4 different teams, where he scored 36 goals and 85 points in the process. Following a 23-game stint with the New York Rangers during the 17-18 season, the Canadian forward would spend the rest of that year, as well as the following season in the minors, before taking his talents overseas to Russia, as he joined KHL side Avtoy Mobilist for the 2019-20 season. After spending the next 2 years of his career in Yekaterinburg, and after scoring 79 points in 119 games with the team, the former first-round draft pick decided to try his luck elsewhere on the continent, as he signed a 1-year contract with SHL side Djurgården IF on September 22, 2021. Over the last few months, Holland has made the move to Sweden and joined Djurgården's roster for the current season of play. Though he has never played in Sweden at any other point during his pro career, the 30-year-old forward has become one of the only bright spots on an otherwise disappointing team, as he has scored 3 points in 6 games for a Djurgården team that currently sits 13th place out of 14 teams in the league standings. Given that he's made a strong start to his Swedish League campaign, here's hoping that Holland can keep it up over the rest of the season and finish the year with some impressive scoring numbers. Sure, his team might not follow suit and could even face relegation by the end of the year, but Holland could find himself sticking around in the SHL for the foreseeable future if he keeps up his current play. It certainly wouldn't be the worst place for him now, would it? Next, at number 6, we have Lance Bouma. The second of 3 Canadian players on this list, Lance Bouma has become quite the productive scorer during his time in the SHL. A third-round pick by the Calgary Flames in 2008, Bouma would spend parts of 7 seasons in the NHL, split between the Flames and the Chicago Blackhawks, where he scored 30 goals and 76 points in 357 games in the process. After a 53-game stint with Chicago during the 17-18 season, the Canadian forward would spend the rest of that year in the minors, play 3 games in Switzerland during the following 18-19 season, and return to the AHL for the 2019-20 season, before heading to Sweden for the recent 2021 season of play, as he joined the SHL's IK Oskarshamn on a 1-year deal. Having scored 13 points in 21 games with his new team, the former third-round pick would move elsewhere in the league once his debut year in Sweden came to an end, as he signed a 2-year contract with the Malmö Redhawks on June 16, 2021. From there, Bouma has made the move to Malmö and joined the Redhawks for the 21-22 season. Luckily for both the player and the organisation, the forward has picked up right where he left off to start the year. Though he has potted 10 points in his first 17 games of the season and has already established himself as one of Malmö's top players, the 31-year-old forward hasn't solved all of their issues so far this season, as the Redhawks currently sit in the bottom half of the league standings. Since he has clearly gotten comfortable playing on the other side of the world now, and since he shall be sticking around with Malmö for the foreseeable future, I expect Bouma to produce a pretty impressive tenure with his new team. After all, he's on pace to play more games and score more points than his debut year in the league prior. You can't really ask much more of him, can you, folks? Halfway through this list now, at number 5, we have Melka Karlsson, yet another Swedish-born player who has returned to his domestic league after many years across the pond. Melka Karlsson is eager to reach his previous career highs with his former team once more. An undrafted player during each of his years of eligibility, Karlsson would earn a contract with the San Jose Sharks on May 30th, 2014, thanks to a productive year with SHL side Skellefteå AIK during the prior 13-14 season. From there, the Swedish forward would take to the ice in 396 NHL games over parts of 6 seasons exclusively with the Sharks, scoring 60 goals and 112 points for his efforts. After spending the 2019-20 season on San Jose's roster, and after producing the least productive season of his entire NHL career with just 12 points in 61 games, Karlsson would leave North America behind and head back home, as he rejoined Skellefteå AIK on a 1-year deal. Having returned to the organisation he had spent his entire career with pre-NHL, the undrafted forward would earn a 1-year extension with the team after potting 10 points in 22 games during the recent 2021 season. Since then, Karlsson has returned to Skellefteå's roster for the 21-22 SHL season. Though he finds himself taking to the ice in his 10th season with the organisation, to say that he has struggled out of the gate would be quite the understatement. With only 3 points in his first 16 games of the year, the 31-year-old is not only scoring at a weaker pace than his first season back home, he is on track to register one of the least productive seasons of his entire pro career. Sure, he's never really been known for his scoring numbers, but the guy has clearly struggled to find his game so far this season. Despite his recent performance being less than ideal at best and downright disappointing at worst, here's hoping that Karlsson can turn things around, rediscover his rhythm on the scoreboard, and produce a respectable year for himself when it's all said and done. After all, his time with Skellefteå might come to an end sooner than he'd like if he doesn't. At the 4th spot on this list, we have Magnus Paajarvi. The highest selection at the NHL draft in this video, Magnus Paajarvi has become the most recent entry to return to his homeland after more than a decade away. The 10th overall pick of the 2010 draft by the Edmonton Oilers, Paajarvi would spend parts of 9 seasons in the NHL, split between the Oilers, the St. Louis Blues and the Ottawa Senators, where he scored 62 goals and 124 points in 467 games during that span. Having spent the entire 18-19 season with the Senators, and having scored 19 points in 80 games over the course of the year, the Swedish forward would return to Europe and take his talents to Russia, as he joined Lokomotiv Yaroslavl of the KHL for the 2019-20 season. From there, Paajarvi would spend the next season and a half of his career with Lokomotiv and score 30 points in 65 games with the team, before finishing the recent 2021 season with fellow KHL side Dynamo Moscow. After scoring 8 points in 24 games with his new team, the former first-round draft pick would have to wait quite some time and look elsewhere across the continent to secure himself a new deal, as he ended up signing a one-year contract with the SHL's Malmö Redhawks just last week on October 28, 2021. Having returned to his native league for the first time in 11 years, and having rejoined Malmö's organisation for the first time since 2007, Paajarvi is back on the Redhawks roster for the current season of play. Since he signed his contract with the team only 10 days ago now, the 30-year-old forward has suited up in just a single game with the team at the time of this recording, where he went scoreless, registered 0 penalty minutes and produced an even plus-minus. Baby steps, people. Considering that he has just played his first pro hockey game in the last 6 months, and he has done so without attending an official pre-season training camp, it may take a little while for Paajarvi to shake off his off-season rust and get back into game shape. Once he does though, I expect him to produce a pretty strong season for a Malmö side who could really use his help right now. Will this end up happening though? I guess time will tell. Moving on to number 3, we have Tobias Rieder. The second German-born player on this list, Tobias Rieder has hit the ground running since his move to the Swedish League. A 4th-round pick by the Edmonton Oilers in the 2011 draft, Rieder suited up in 478 NHL games over parts of 7 seasons split between 5 different teams, scoring 64 goals and 145 points in the process. After spending the recent 2021 season with the Buffalo Sabres, and having played for 5 different NHL teams over the last 4 years, the German forward would take his talents back across the pond for the current season of play after he was unable to secure a deal in the show, as he signed a 1-year contract with the SHL's Växjö Lakers on October 15, 2021. Over the last few weeks, Rieder has made the move to Sweden for the very first time, joined Växjö's roster for the 21-22 season, and started his debut year in the SHL. Though his tenure in the league began less than a month ago now, the former 4th-round draft pick has made quite the first impression with his new team. With 5 points in his first 6 games of the season, the 28-year-old forward has already established himself as a vital member of a Växjö team currently sitting 5th place in the league standings. Given his strong start to the season and his lengthy tenure in the best league in the world, I wouldn't be surprised to see Rieder keep up this scoring pace for the rest of the season and register one of the most productive years of his entire pro career. And who knows, maybe his high-scoring play in Sweden will turn a few heads back across the pond and earn him another contract in the NHL. Crazier things have happened, right guys? Penultimately, at number 2, we have Dale Weise. The final Canadian player on this list, and one of the more veteran entries in this video, Dale Weise is looking to continue his career in Sweden after a season-long hiatus from the sport. A 4th-round pick by the New York Rangers in 2008, Weise would take to the ice in parts of 10 seasons in the NHL, split between 5 different teams, scoring 55 goals and 125 points during that span. Following a 23-game stint with the Habs during the 2019-20 season, the Canadian forward would spend the rest of that year in the minors with Montreal's AHL affiliate the Laval Rocket, before stepping away from the sport during the recent 2021 season, as he decided to forego signing with a team and didn't suit up in a single pro hockey game over the course of the year. Having put his career on hold for an entire season of play, the former 4th-round draft pick decided that he wanted to continue his career once the 21-22 season rolled around, but elsewhere in the hockey world, as he signed a 1-year contract with SHL side IK Oskarshamn on May 31st, 2021. Since then, Weise has joined Oskarshamn's roster for the 21-22 season. Despite making the move across the pond for the first time since the 2012 lockout, and despite embarking on his first full season in Europe in his entire pro career, Weise has had a difficult start to his time in Sweden. Though he had signed with the team well before the season got underway, Weise has played just a single game for Oskarshamn and has registered only 6 minutes of ice time due to his injuries. That said, the 33-year-old forward is expected to make a full recovery and return to Oskarshamn's lineup in the near future, so expect him to finally get his season underway in the coming weeks. Though he clearly hasn't made the ideal first impression during his opening year in Sweden, he is hoping that Weise can bounce back from his injury troubles, produce a strong second half of the season, and help Oskarshamn clinch a berth in the SHL playoffs. Given the bad luck he has dealt with so far this year, the guy really deserves a win, you know. And finally, at number 1, we have Carl Soderbergh. The oldest player on this list by a pretty notable margin, Carl Soderbergh may be entering the twilight years of his career, but he takes the top spot on this list thanks to becoming one of the best players in the SHL this season. A second-round pick in the 2004 draft by the St. Louis Blues, Soderbergh suited up in 597 NHL games over parts of 9 seasons split between 4 different teams, where he scored 110 goals and 297 points during that span. After splitting the recent 2021 season between the Chicago Blackhawks and the Colorado Avalanche, the Swedish forward decided to head back across the pond and return home to Sweden, as he signed a 2-year contract with the SHL's Malmö Redhawks on June 16, 2021. Having returned to his homeland for the first time in 8 years, and having rejoined the Redhawks for the first time since 2011, Soderbergh is back in Malmö for the 21-22 season. Despite having last played for the organisation roughly a decade ago now, the 36-year-old forward has wasted little time making an impact for the team both on and off the ice. Wearing a C on his jersey as the captain of the roster, the Swedish forward is currently tied for 2nd in goals and 7th in points across the entire SHL, thanks to potting 10 goals and 17 points in his first 17 games of the year. Not bad for a guy in his mid-30s, eh, folks? Given that his career is entering its latter stages now, and given that he has produced such a strong start to his tenure back home, he is hoping that Soderbergh can keep up this high-scoring play for the rest of his tenure with the team, and continue to prove that age is just a number. Sure, he might not stick around as long as some of the other entries on this list, but considering he is playing far better and scoring at a much higher pace than anyone else that we've looked at, he could certainly be doing a lot worse for himself, that's for sure. And that was a look at the top 10 former NHLers who are playing in the Swedish Hockey League this season. What do you guys think about my list? Are you surprised to see so many experienced NHL veterans playing in the SHL this year, or did I leave somebody completely obvious out? Let me know in the comments below, I would love to hear what you guys think. But thank you very much for watching, guys, I hope you have enjoyed. Please feel free to like, subscribe, share, or watch some of my other videos. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye! A big thank you to Drew Fawcett, Houston NG, and Worthless Pieces for helping support this video via Patreon. If you too want to help support the channel a little bit further, and get a shout out at the end of every future video, make sure you head over to patreon.com/oddmanrush and become a patron today.